This week I have Dr. Michael Vanyukov, a professor of genetics and psychiatry at the University of Pittsburgh, a man of real insight. Hello, Dr. Vanyukov. You are a man of science and academia, and more than that, you understand the evils of communism. Please tell our viewers and listeners more about who you are so they will understand how important your recent work is.
Hi, Paul, and please call me Michael. I'm a tenured professor, as you said, at the University of Pittsburgh. I teach in several courses, but my main work is research in the field of substance use and addiction. As a Jew who immigrated in this country as a refugee from the Soviet Union, I also follow social developments since I came here 30 years ago. That includes changes in tolerance to anti-Semitism.
Wow. Your article, When Scientists Support Hate, Racism, and Anti-Semitism in the Jewish Chronicle, exposes an evil and a lack of scientific understanding in academic societies. In that, an endorsement of anti-Semitism is becoming the norm. How did you first encounter this?
Well, tolerance to anti-Semitism in academic societies is a direct expression of Jew hate that has been spreading in American universities with their overwhelming progressive faculty. Using the term Jew is no longer considered appropriate after the European genocide. So a ready replacement is used, Zionist, to ensure plausible deniability. Coming from the Soviet Union, I'm well familiar with that because this is where that switch was invented. And like there, everybody understands what is meant by when Zionists are mentioned. Everything that Israel does in trying to defend itself from endless jihad against it is interpreted as unjustified and unjust attacks on innocent Arabs. For all of that, all the Jews in the world, especially in the United States, bear responsibility, which proves that it is actually the Jews that are under attack, not even Israel. I first learned about anti-Semitism in academia in the United States by finding out about persecution of Jewish students at the American universities, such as UC Irvine, where the Muslim Student Union invites an openly anti-Semitic speakers every spring. Then there was a Students for Justice in Palestine event in my own university, a revolting video that slandered the Israeli army. The Students for Justice in Palestine is an anti-Israel group whose name itself erases Israel. As you know, Palestine does not exist except in the name of the League of Nations mandate and as an anglicized form of the insulting name that the Romans gave Judea after being almost defeated in the last Judean war. The university official who I unsuccessfully tried to convince to withdraw the university's support for this SJP, Students for Justice in Palestine, rejected my request, of course, and then I found out that he was given a provost award for diversity in curriculum. That's the kind of diversity that is welcome there. Then there was my experience with the giving a 5-lecture course in modern Israeli history at the Osher Lifetime Learning Institute at the Carnegie Mellon University, another local university here. It was canceled after being presented for the first time, but the anti-Israel, anti-Semitic teaching continued. That's been actually a series of encounters rather than just one. And that's not the full list, of course.
I thank you for clarifying that Israel, the real reason for that term Palestine. I always laugh when I hear people say they are Palestinians. I say, are you really Jews? Yeah. Okay. That's the history of the word. And they can't even say it when they live in Palestine. There's no PH sound in the Arabic, so it's even funnier. What is the Behavior Genetics Association?
The Behavior Genetics Association is the scientific society, a professional society that publishes a monthly scientific journal and organizes an annual meeting among the scientists involved in studying the genetic and environmental mechanisms of variation in human behavior, including behavior disorders like addiction. And it includes many outstanding scientists, leaders in the field.
So how is this? I don't know if you can hear the thunder and lightning just started here. Didn't expect that. How is the endorsement of Black Lives Matter hypocritical of the Behavior Genetics Association?
Well, first, the BGA leadership has never before expressed any concern about any diversity or inclusion. In fact, it is due to the concerns of the members that in mid-1990s, its president, one Glade Whitney, was condemned after letting us know about his racist views. He was also an anti-Semite.
Ooh.
So it's a bandwagon virtuousness. Second, BGA support for BLM is also partisan, as it is only among Democrats where it is mainstreamed, which includes shamefully Democrat members of the US Congress. Of course, BGA also is not supposed to have anything to do with partisan politics. By its bylaws, it is only to promote studies, training, and the dissemination of knowledge, nothing else. So supporting BLM, presumably in defense of ethnic justice, BGA also excuses BLM's Jew hate, dismissing it.
Excuse me, can you say that again? They dismiss it?
Yes, well, just like they dismissed it in my communication with them when I requested BGA support to be withdrawn, revoked from BLM.
Wow. So, how are they engaging in the... Wow. How is the endorsement of Black Lives Matter hypocritical of the Behavior Genetics Association?
Well, that's more or less what I've just described. And I can add also that you wouldn't expect a scientific society to be engaged in the promotion, say, of anti-Semitism, right?
Well,
so that's right.
Don't they have a big thing in academic societies against the concept of bias?
Right, of course they do. Somehow that concept of bias does not include Jews. It is directed to sort of special groups. So what happened is that the rules that assign privilege by race have changed, and the privilege and calumnies were not erased entirely, but reallocated. And of course, both sets of rules are racism. They're immoral regardless of whether they apply to minorities or majorities. And Jews, however, like the speed of light, never change. An obvious minority, they're bad in both old and updated systems. We can talk about the race. Scientifically, race is not clearly defined. It is now possible to crudely separate people by ancestry in genetic terms, but that has nothing to do with the history of slavery. That is a reference for the current updated race theory. And little to do with the criteria used in the society.
Wow. It's rare I run into an academic that actually gets this. I have to say thank you, and I applaud you for standing up. It almost makes, the bias statements that have to be done in academic works. It almost makes me wonder if it has to be now posted underneath the description of the Behavior Genetics Association. I mean, for every dissertation that has to be written, you have to write a statement about bias. Is there bias in the work? So are they now saying that this bias statement has to be included with their the description of their association?
Well, not directly like that, but I've actually encountered that requirement in the NIH, in particular in the NIH Scientific Review Center, which reviews the grants that are to be funded or not funded, and the statement from this Scientific Review Center was, I actually can quote to you, that there is absolutely no question that implicit bias exists in all of us as individuals, which means accusing everybody of racism.
Wow.
I tried to argue against that in vain.
Some of these things you just sit there, oh my gosh. So you just mentioned one of the other ones. Are you aware of any other academic or science societies endorsing BLM or anti-Semitism?
Not in such a blunt form as BGA, the Behavior Genetics Association, but just about every scientific society I'm familiar with has signaled its virtue by connecting George Floyd's death with anti-black racism, while there is no such connection in reality. The BLM pogroms that resulted from that connection are mentioned nowhere in those virtuous declarations. And these declarations, of course, are filled with slogans familiar to everybody who has lived under communism.
You mentioned one word that I'd just like you to have to clarify for some who are a little bit younger, but can you clarify pogroms? And I don't think there'd be anybody better to clarify that.
Pogrom is, its precise definition is a riot in which Jews are targeted specifically to be killed, robbed, burglarized, basically undergo violence that was frequently with the lethal outcome. The word is Russian. It comes from the Russian language, and again, it is used specifically for violence against Jews, where people were killed, like members of my own family.
I taught history for 20 years. Taught about the pogroms every single one of those years, and I don't know why, but I hope none of my students forgot that. But I look at today's world, and it just seems like we've forgotten our history. We're going to be doomed to repeat it, and that's scary to me.
That's one of the few Russian words that enter the English dictionaries in the unchanged form.
I know I wish I would. I didn't write very many questions for you, but I would love to. Is there anything else you would like for us to do? Is there any solution that you see or possible way to combat this insanity of supposed scientific and academia associations?
Well, I'm pretty actually. First, of course, I would be immensely gratified if people simply spoke about it, particularly when it is Gentiles rather than Jews who speak about it, because anti-Semitism is frequently considered a Jewish problem. to put it mildly. And however, I'm very skeptical because, you know, usually when something becomes part of a political platform, like this tolerance to progressive anti-Semitism has become part of the democratic platform, it is very, very difficult to remove. And unfortunately, as I mentioned, most of the people in academia are progressive, and of course, they are Democrat voters.
We have, well, one of the things that I should talk about, I talk with you really quickly about is we have the Democratic, uh, the Democrats today are really remakes of communism. They're really not what we would refer to as related to democracy. We do not have a true democratic party anymore. We have a communist party in there. And in that respect, they have not left. They brought their anti-Semitism with them. Would you agree with that?
I actually, I am in complete agreement with you, and I think that um, the Democratic Party has evolved from a racist party to the party that tolerated communism and actually tried to get in cahoots with the Soviet KGB when Edward Kennedy contacted KGB to prevent Reagan's election, to now they are tolerant of what should be uh, a complete taboo. They're uh, the tolerant to anti-Semitism, tolerant to Muslim extremism, while pursuing these mirages of of uh, the the sort of irredeemable racism of America and Americans and every non uh, non-black American, or I don't know, these are all actually horrific racist terms. The people of color. My dream, and I'm not Martin Luther King, but my dream is that color, when people are discussed, was completely banned from the language rather than being emphasized as it has become uh, sort of a proper thing to do now.
I have to I have to say you're right. I mean, I grew up. I grew up not knowing much about color or anything. Not even being able to just. My parents were teachers. There was no difference, and I am shocked. I don't know how else to describe that. I mean, my church where I go is a compilation of um, different colors, different races, different ethnicities. You have people from all over the world there, and I can't imagine. I mean, I just can't imagine how anybody would go this way. But again, the Democrats have always been a party of hatred. Unfortunately, they were started by a racist Andrew Jackson, and they seem to be picking up a new hatred every time. It was hatred against black people and keeping them enslaved. Now it's hatred against white people and Jews, and that's the other thing they're doing. They're calling. They used to say when their party, their entity, the KKK existed. They used to say Jews were not white, and
Exactly. Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that because um, the criteria for determining which race the individual is in the eye of the beholder, and this is anybody who wants to use race to split the society to rule it. Um, the current race definition is in fact the Ku Klux Klan one, by pigmentation,
oh,
except, as I said, the Jews who remain outcasts regardless of color. In reality, considering that, as a geneticist, so considering considering that the Americans of African ancestry have a very large admixture of European genes, one would need the Nazi-style Nuremberg laws to determine when the person becomes black and or white. And to remind you, the Nuremberg laws, which determined the harmful, dangerous proportion of the Jewish blood, were a foundation of the Holocaust. And another update to racial rules is the replacement of the class rules of Marxism. And this is true progress, I would say, because you can potentially change your class, but race is like diamonds forever.
Thank you. You're making me feel better about what I taught for years, because those are things I thought and hoped would make my kids scared about this concept of racial rules. But I'm shocked and appalled that I guess I shouldn't be, because it's communism is what it is.
That's what it
There's no
is.
difference.
Yeah.
I want to say thank you for joining us. Is there how can people follow your work, particularly your written work on this topic, because I think it's extremely important.
Well, you can search my name, say, in combination with Israel or anti-Semitism. You can also follow my blog, to which I write rather seldom, but it's a very simple name, unchartedforest.blogspot.com.
Well, thank you. I have to have you back soon. God bless.
Thank you very much. God bless you too.